What have you been up to anyway? What's going on in ladies rugby at the moment?
Just back from the Sevens rugby in Colorado with the first leg of the Sevens World Series over in Denver. So not a particularly good start for us. So we're back in this week trying to right a few wrongs and get set for the next leg, which is in Dubai at the beginning of December.
This is Louise Galvin in studio. Tell me about the Sevens. What's that like compared to the normal stuff?
Pretty tough, yeah. Like I suppose
physically demanding. I'd say you're tired, like.
Yeah. And in Colorado as well, it's at altitude, so it was
right.
I missed the tournament last year. I was injured, so it was a real eye opener. Like, it was just so difficult to get your breath back once you just made any sort of a sprint at all. I describe it as being torture, really. Sevens. It sounds short.
Your words now.
Yeah, 7 minutes a half. So you think it's going to fly, but I've never realised 7 minutes could last so long. The work rate is just massive, and then obviously you're trying to make these decisions under fatigue as well. But there's something really, I don't know, satisfying about it, or you just get a draw to it, attracted to it, and it's a really unique kind of team atmosphere in that even when you go away, we travel a lot, our tournaments all around the world, which is obviously positive as well. You're staying in the same hotel as all the other teams you're playing with, you're eating at the same time.
That's cool.
So you end up actually with a real bond with nearly the teams you play against, because any other sport I've played or any other game, you know, you're kept away from the team and you have this distance between them. Sevens, that's one thing that's a little bit different. It's probably a bit of a mix between male and female a bit more as well than other sports. Like, we train with our men's squad out now in the new High Performance Centre in Blanchardstown, but prior to that in Lansdowne Road, and it's similar with some of the other international teams, and we play a lot of double leg tournaments, so a few differences, but overall physically incredibly demanding.
What sort of nick are you in at the moment then as a team?
Not too bad. We've had a good few young players come through, which has actually been really good, because it's been a young enough squad starting. About 4 or 5 years ago, they probably would have targeted a lot of transfer athletes. Like, I would have come from Gaelic football and basketball background, and a lot of our team would have. So it meant that, you know, a lot of players kind of made early 20s, but they hadn't a lot of time in rugby. So we're getting there. Our rugby knowledge and awareness is improving all the time. The only problem is, for a lot of the other countries, the standard is improving massively. So as we're getting better, so is everyone else. So a bit of a challenge, but you know, last year we got to one semi-final, which is our first time ever in the World Series. So we're definitely hoping to emulate that and more this year.
What's the story with before we get to the men's game? What's the story with basketball in Kerry? It just seems to be so big there. Like, I've noticed that. Yeah, I don't. Castle Island has the Blitz and all that as well.
Yeah, Castle Blitz is very popular every Christmas. I don't know, even and it's both for male and females, and you'll have periods where it'll drop off. Like, there's times where you might have 3 Super League teams when I was growing up, male and female, and then there was none. And now, fair play to Kieran Donaghy. Like, the work he's done down in the Warriors is just incredible. I mean, the atmosphere is those games, people queuing up to come in, and it's great because, especially in winter time in these, you know, a rural town like Tralee, there isn't a huge amount going on, particularly from a sporting point of view, because GA is all obviously dampened down for the year, or, well, apart from the club games probably going 12 months around, but fair play to them, because they saw an opportunity where there's an appetite for sports people to jump on a real community team, and they've absolutely ran with it in terms of Warriors. But even for girls, like, there's always been a strong schools game, club game. I'd love to see a Super League female team as well. Probably one of the issues there is obviously girls go away to college just like lads as well, and then you're trying to transfer to college teams, you're trying to get them back. But yeah, it's always been a real hub for basketball. Yeah, brilliant sport as well.
Yeah. There's talk of even a League of Ireland team potentially coming in. I know Kerry 17s were playing the cup final against Bows and Tralee, so plenty happened in the province. The last time you were in was after the Japan defeat. So where are you now relative to where we're at?
In terms of my own?
In terms of the, what have you made of Ireland since?
Oh, what have I made of Ireland?
That was pretty bad, but it doesn't look as bad now because Japan looked pretty good on Sunday, I guess. Yeah, you're like, okay, well, how, you were trying to rank, well, where Scotland are, where Japan at, so we can see where Ireland are at. But, Japan are incredibly impressive. I see Hansen there is playing a few mind games, maybe saying, oh, well, I'm glad we've avoided Japan. And you wonder, listen, you wouldn't be worried about playing anyone, I think, at this stage, but is that just, I think it's just more of a dig of, we're happy to play Ireland, he's trying to say in not so many words. But they've taken this game by storm, and besides the Ireland-New Zealand game, that's the other quarterfinal that I'm actually really looking forward to, the Japan-South Africa game.
As for Ireland, I think we're in better shape because obviously, look, we all know, brilliant 2018, poor Six Nations, a complete wobbler with that England warm-up game, starting to get a bit of momentum. Then again, in the build-up to the World Cup, we thought we were great after beating Scotland, thought everything went well. And obviously then the Japan game happened.
There is a kind of an up and down nature of it, isn't there? Like it's when one followed by bad, like, or whatever.
Yeah, and in terms of the actual World Cup, look, at 7 weeks, you're not going to be at peak every week. So I think that's fine, but maybe what's a little bit alarming for people is the form for 2019 as a whole. But having said that, you know, I definitely take what Johnny Sexton said in his presser yesterday on point, that coming into the end of the group stages, we're definitely in better form. There's a few kind of key things, like Johnny and Conor Murray had a pretty good game there for Samoa. A few guys really coming back into form, like Tadhg Furlong and CJ Stander, who was someone, you know, where he was a nailed-on starter. He was really being questioned about why he was playing, but he had a brilliant game there against Samoa. So there's a few things that are starting to come right, certainly. So we're better shape than we were the last time I was in with you. Yeah,
we heard Rory O'Connor there on about the Larmour v Kearney dilemma. Where are you on that?
Once Kearney's fit, he'll play, because I just think his aerial prowess, particularly from a defensive point of view, like Joe is very, I suppose, loyal to his performers, and he's a defence-first type of man. And I think if Larmour was to play, it's great if we dominate territory and possession. He's probably going to be more of a threat going forward. But from a defensive point of view, I think Kearney, he's one of those players you don't realise how good or how important he is until he's not there, because he's covering that backfield, and he just seems to have that positional awareness that seems to be another step up, which is probably, you know, he's 33, he's the most capped full back in World Rugby, actually, which has probably gone under the radar. It happened during this World Cup. I think that when he made when he played his first game after that injury in the initial game, and he's a guy that we don't realise how good he is defensively, and I think a lot of that is down to his positional awareness, obviously, as well as his rugby ability. So I think Joe's going to go with Rob, and then have the potential of a bit of a game breaker in Larmour coming off the bench.
Yeah, which will likely happen if, I mean, I was reading Alan Quinlan this morning in the Indo. He's like, we need to put it up to these lads. If we play a containing game, it's just not going to work. We need to be in your face. But I would imagine we can't fall very far behind against them either. We need to at least stay in touch, because I don't know if they get a couple of tries in us, where's this comeback going to come from? Like,
yeah, and we're not really a team that do come back now. A lot of the time,
the game
a lot of the time in recent years we have been kind of there or ahead, but you saw against Japan we weren't able to claw that back in, even though we had certainly decent amounts of possession. So I think if we end up a few tries back, you know, I wouldn't be putting money in us coming from behind. So I think it's going to be a management from the starting whistle. And Joe has done this before. Like, we've obviously beaten them twice the last 3 times we've played them, and most of the guys playing would have beaten them. Plus, a few of the guys haven't played with the Lions as well, so they have that extra win and draw against them. I suppose the fear is that even if we play to our best and do this whole, you know, manage the possession, manage the territory, play this almost slightly conservative in terms of, compared to other teams' game plan, with the execution levels that Joe demands and so often achieves, I still wonder, are New Zealand going to beat us? Because there's always this question whether we have a plan B or whether we can adapt or evolve to a game. Compare that to New Zealand, who in the first 20 minutes against South Africa,
they were blown away almost,
being obliterated, and the defensive,
and the game was over in like 10 minutes in almost. Insane.
The defensive line speed and just the whole system that Razzie implemented with South Africa, and then even if the wingers coming in making tackles where nearly your 12 should be making them, but you could see New Zealand adapt, see that space out in the wing, realise they weren't able to pass it out there, and just start to chip it over, and then you're 2 tries in, and all of a sudden the game is right back on their terms, and they run out of 10, 13 point winners.
Would you start Tadhg Byrne? Do you think he's in the mix to start?
I don't think so. I think the pack is fairly set with what we would have predicted, probably even before the tournament. And that's another positive. We're not going into this game with any real injury concerns.
And also they're going in, and they're going in a bit cold after the Italy game called off.
Yeah, like I was looking back going, well, where are New Zealand at? And you have to go back to that South Africa game to actually have any semblance of it. And similarly for South Africa as well. And so, you know, in a tournament like this, you could look at, well, our Ireland a bit more battle-hardened, a bit more aware of who their starting 15 are, and who they want coming off the bench compared to New Zealand. You know, potentially. So now I know they're saying they had this big training session at the weekend, and you know, coaches, they love throwing out like the GPS stats are off the chart, these are, you know, PVs in the gym. We're hearing a lot of this kind of
we've heard that from Ireland already.
Yeah, we're hearing, you know,
and it's almost used as like, we need to say this just to show that things are grand, kind of, you know.
Yeah, but, a bit of positive propaganda or something.
Yeah, like positive propaganda, because propaganda is always positive. Let's hear from the New Zealand rugby press conference earlier this morning. New Zealand's forwards coach Ian Foster was talking about what to expect against Ireland.
Yeah, look, I think I don't think there's one tactic that's good or bad. I think it's how you use it in terms of during the game. But certainly, you know, we've got a do or die game against Ireland. They're a high retention team, so they like to hold the ball, and they'll use the kick when they feel they're under pressure or they sense weakness. So, you know, we're not expecting a barrage of kicking. We're expecting a team that'll want to hold the ball and a lot of rucks and a lot of tackles. So that's their style. And you know, we've got to just, like I said earlier, we've just got to prepare for what we see on Saturday and go and do what we need to do.
Sorry, what's your overall impression of Ireland being?
Sorry, I missed that.
What's your overall impression of Ireland being throughout the tournament?
Pretty good. Really, I mean, a lot's been made of their performance against Japan, and I think if you flip that over, you've probably got to really pat Japan on the back for that game. Well, they played really, really well. But I think if you look at, you know, like Japan beat Scotland by 7, and that's a great win. But Ireland were pretty ruthless against Scotland and really put them away when they needed to, and they looked good against Samoa with 14 men. So I'm pretty sure they'll be primed and ready.
Primed and ready, yeah. These press conferences are, I don't know if you've done many in your day, but they're obviously difficult because you want to be honest, but you also want to put a spin on things. And there has been a bit of mind games, and I've enjoyed the Cheika mind games, particularly against Jones, but Hansen's been getting involved as well.
Yeah, they are a bit of mind games, and I think in a World Cup as well, there's just so many of them. I like what Ireland are nearly doing is putting out a different, even back member staff, ones that we're not used to seeing, and there's a nice little positive spin on that yesterday when Johnny was on with Vinnie Hammond, who they've known each other since they're teenagers, and anyone that's met Vinnie, he's great crack as well.
Yeah.
He's very personable, very easygoing, so that was definitely...
Today Porter didn't even show up, so it's like we'll just bring out half our players for the press conference. So
they're probably just getting a bit tired of them now, but yeah, like I mentioned at the start of the show about Hansen mentioning, I'm glad we avoided Japan, is obviously quite straight.
Why do you say that actually though? Like, I mean, is that not like kind of going to rile Ireland's players up?
Yeah, I think so, but I think they have a certain level of arrogance that he's not going to worry about riling Ireland up or getting a backlash. And again,
you call it arrogance?
A little bit of that, yeah. I think when you're such a dominant force, I mean, they haven't lost in World Cup rugby
16 games, yeah.
Yeah, 2007 in the quarter-final against France, that, you know, they believe the hype around themselves. Now, they deliver, usually. Obviously, we hope that's not going to happen this Saturday. But, yeah, with Hansen, I think he was obviously trying to compliment the Japanese, which the whole world is trying to do. You know, they're everyone's second favourite team at the moment, but it also has had an undertone of a dig at, we're happy to play Ireland as the other team in the pool. Kind of saying, listen, we've no fear of you just because you're going around with this record of having beaten us 2 of the last 3 times we played you.
Granted we have, but does that actually really matter now, considering where we were last, November, compared to now with all the... We probably went into that at our peak in terms of the Joe Schmidt era almost, and it was like a peak performance, but now there have been so many in different performances, you're wondering, like, does it matter? I know they've the monkeys off the back, but like... I don't think it's a concern for New Zealand that they've lost to us, to be honest.
No, it's not really a concern for them. For us, it just gives us that belief. It just knowing you've been there, knowing you've done that, and they've been 2 competitive games as well. I mean, for someone like, you look back at that game, someone like Jacob Stockdale hasn't scored yet in the tournament, knowing he's pulled out that performance. Peter O'Mahony, who, had a good introduction off the bench, and I expect him to start at the weekend. I mean, we can all remember him just being imperious in that game, the chip behind, diving. It was almost like something out of the gods, the way he got that ball. Those little memories, to have them in your bank and to know you've beaten them at home and away, even though it's on US soil, it's just something that it's definitely a positive in Ireland's back pocket.
You say it's in your bank anyway.
Yeah, but at the same time, it doesn't lend to any recent form.
Bundy Aki's banned, so who starts and what are we going to do about that? Assuming he doesn't play, looks pretty unlikely at the moment.
Yeah, it's incredible that we've never really known who Joe picks out of Bundy, Ringrose and Henshaw, because all 3 haven't been completely fit. I know Ringrose wasn't injured at the weekend, but his game time was pretty high. So I think we're actually in fairly decent shape, because we're going to go with Robbie and Gary. Robbie was, a little bit off the ball in terms of his handling and maybe decision-making, passing at the weekend, but I think that's fairly to be expected, and overall he was pretty decent, pretty good shape, and Joe has a lot of time for him. He's a really, really good player, really good defensive player as well, good reader of the game, so I think he's going to slot into 12, Gary go 13.
How is the game going to be won and lost, or how can we actually beat them?
Similar to our previous, or the way we play the game, we need to control it in our terms, play this pressure territory game, and then execute to a really high level, and then you're going to hope that Joe has a few power plays to pull out of his bag. But it's not going to be, we're not going to win if this game goes 45-37, because we're not going to score like that. Even though we did beat them quite well in Chicago, but I think that was a different Kiwi team. They were a bit weaker then. They brought a stronger team to play us in November, and we still beat them. But you could see it was like a 1 try, 3 penalty type game from our point of view. And I could see it being that kind of a scoreline again if we are going to come out on top.
Do we actually have the backs to win this game? Because as you mentioned there, certainly Stockdale hasn't scored yet. He hasn't scored a try yet. Do we have actually the nous and the play to produce something, to get an amazing try or 2? Because surely it's not going to be all forward play to win this, because that's not going to be enough.
No, it's not going to be enough. We do have the backs, and I think we have the mindset and the coach, whether we've had that kind of form to bring with us that we had in 2018 is more the risk, or as well if Joe brings something that New Zealand are more than capable of dealing with. If those power plays don't come off, they are our opportunity to score. They're off our line out, our scrum. I think we're one of the highest teams to have scored tries straight off a line out as our launch play. So obviously that New Zealand will be well aware of that, but they'll pick at a few chinks in their armour, like they often put Mwanga to 13 defensively, so maybe he might be a target for them. If New Zealand go with certain 15 like they went against South Africa, they don't have a lot of experience, particularly in their wingers. Obviously they're tremendous players and game breakers, but Severis and Bridge, they might be a target for Ireland in terms of kind of that maybe defensive naivety at this level, so they might target them and see what they can get out of it. But it's, this reminds me of the build-up to the All-Ireland final, Dublin-Kerry, because as a Kerry woman, I'd wake up and I'm like, yeah, absolutely, before the drawing game, we can take this. And then another morning you're waking up going, oh lads, are we going to be hockeyed at the gate? And it almost, I feel the same again. I'm like, is this going to be an absolute unmitigated disaster, or are we going to be stuck in this and in it, and all of a sudden the pressure's back on New Zealand then, because not very many people actually expect Ireland to win this. So if we're 65 minutes, then it's game on.
Nice Dublin-Kerry comparison there as well. Owen Sheehan has been very brave in his journalism in Japan. We're going to cross over to him very shortly, and he was particularly brave talking to Ian Foster at the press conference as well earlier.